So you and I at one point were both like very aligned that both of our publications should be doing lots of ebooks, and like we're still doing some, but I've like kind of soured on the strategy until we get bigger because I think it's so much resources, and you know, I'd rather. I just think it's like you have to have intense focus when you're a startup, and I feel like it's been distracting for us without the returns. And I go back to like. And I said we weren't talking about TechCrunch, but I'm referencing old TechCrunch, what it did right. I think what TechCrunch did so well on the event side was really waiting until it was a dominant brand to do disrupt. And I kind of feel like it's the same thing with ebooks and something like that that's never really been proven to be sort of a good defensible model for a media company like ours. So I'm curious why you, with fewer resources and a smaller readership, because you're behind a paywall, not because you guys aren't awesome.
No, we are awesome. That's true.
Are investing so much in ebooks?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Sarah. Let me do my best. So the first thing I would say is, I think the thing with ebooks is I don't actually think being a dominant brand necessarily helps. I've been interested to watch Salon and Huffington Post and their ebook strategy. Now, obviously, I don't have their sales numbers to hand, but let's just say that the ebooks they produce have been uninspiring, and if anything have seemed...
God, you keep dodging that lamp. It's just blinding.
Does it help if I do this?
It's like there's a big light there and a big light there. This is awful. Why don't you sit in your swivel chair right there?
I'm going to sit in this swivel chair.
Right
here. Yeah. I'm going to sit this way around.
Your Michael J. Fox chair.
Spin around.
Okay. Don't make us dizzy. Now you're too close to the desk lamp.
Christ.
Just, there. Okay. Thank you. John Orland thanks you.
Every time we mention John Orland being pissed, he sends me an email confirming or refuting whether he's pissed about our camera work.
Ebooks.
No, I actually think the interesting thing is I've seen a lot of quote-unquote dominant brands doing ebooks, and the danger with bolting it on to an existing big media brand is all I seem to see is them repackaging and repurposing stuff that they've published as part of their core product.
But I think bolting it on is a very loaded phrase. I mean, I don't think Disrupt was bolted on to TechCrunch. I think it grew out of it.
But that's where I'm differentiating the two. I think with something like Disrupt, it was brand extension for sure, but it was a whole different thing. There was a startup competition, whatever else. What I'm saying is I think I've seen a lot of dominant brands adding an ebook strategy after the fact, and all of them seem to do, they get complacent because they are a dominant brand. They think our readers will buy anything, and it hasn't really worked. And I think the key to, it's like starting we've fallen into this much like with blogs, because anyone can start one. Everyone thinks it's really easy, and you just have to start a blog and everyone will come. Whereas in fact, look at the blogs that do well, the TechCrunches and the Pandos, and they're the ones that have built themselves like journalistic organizations that just so happen to look like blogs. Whereas the ones, even that have the same personnel, so something like Uncrunch, which has the same guy who founded TechCrunch, it's a personal blog, and I wouldn't presume to say what the traffic is, but judging by the number of links I've seen and the number of comments on each post, it's not TechCrunch.
Yeah.
I think the thing with ebooks is people have assumed that because it's cheap and easy to do something that looks like an ebook and get it on Amazon, it's really easy to do. In fact, if you're serious about ebooks, you have to be really serious, as if you were starting a regular publishing company. So that was.
Well, then by that definition, I should never do them, because that's never going to be. We're not a publishing company.
No, I think by that definition, if you're going to do it, it should be as important a decision as doing something like Disrupt. It is in the same way as starting Disrupt.
No, I agree with that.
Building a events business.
Yeah, and that's actually why I've hit the pause button on a little bit of it. We're still experimenting with it. We've won a really good one that's hopefully going to come out this year, but we haven't been rushing it because it's like, it's not a topic that needs to be rushed. Right. We have another one that's kind of in the can, but it's like, my thing, I guess in a way we kind of agree, because
we definitely agree.
Because I think it should be something we're like really dedicated to when we do it.
So let me tell you what our strategy then is we are really dedicated to it. That's the point. Is this book that we just put out, which is Josh's Juarez book. I spent basically my last month doing not much else.
But is that the best use of your company's resources?
So here's the thing. Yes.
Because it's definitely not of ours.
No, it isn't of yours, because your priority has to be getting the readership of the blog up, getting the quality up. The redesign was amazing, which I think is since we last did Why Isn't This News. It looks fantastic. For us, we have one goal, which is to build a paying audience for high quality journalism. And frankly, that audience exists much more readily in ebooks than it does in a paid online subscription. And so, if anything, we should be focusing even potentially more on the ebook side than we are on the.
You should really be a publishing company, is what you're saying.
We are. I mean, we are, in all intents and purposes, a publishing company. The resources that if you look at the stuff that we've been doing, focusing on recently, it's sending people to places and getting to long series of dispatches that are. I mean, Mark spent. Well,
we sent Hamish to Scandinavia.
That
doesn't make you a publishing company.
No, it doesn't. But what I'm saying, no, of course it doesn't. But putting you on a plane doesn't make you putting your staff on a plane doesn't make you a journalist company either. What I'm saying is, if you look at what we've been doing, though, is all of it has been geared up to doing these long, sustained pieces of reporting, which we intend to make into books and promote the hell out of books. I don't want to give too much away because I don't even think we've even discussed it privately yet. But I have some really interesting plans for what we're going to do with our book publishing, and the ebook is a distraction. There's no more relevant to talk about ebooks to my mind as it is to talk about hardback versus paperback. It's books, and books in a number of different formats is something that we're really doubling down on because
Slate tablets. Are you doing those?
Yep, we're doing Slate
Cave
tablets.
Walls.
We're going to do Cave Walls is more pictures. We're more of a words medium, so definitely we'll be doing.
Eli won't like that.
Gigantic obelisks with that you will need a second stone to translate. We'll be doing a lot of that. But the point being, no, we are massively doubling down on ebooks as a strategy.
It sounds like you're tripling down.
We're quadrupling down, like the quadruple bypass of the heart attack grill. People may die. But the challenge is, to your point though about it being a distraction, what you will see in the coming months is our online subscription strategy evolving to embrace that fact. These are not two separate things.
So you're shifting your focus more than you're splitting your focus.
Our focus has always been on getting people to pay for high quality journalism that frankly cannot sustain itself in an advertising sponsored model. So no, we're not shifting our focus in that regard. We are, however, recognizing that the audience is already there in ebooks.
So is this a hunch, or have you seen that people would rather have the not safe for work voice in an ebook form versus daily dispatch form?
It's both. The evidence is there, but I can't say that it's overwhelming to the point because we haven't done ebook. We did James Kotechi's ebook as just to test the processes, but inherently that was because it was about the conventions. That had like a 1 week sales run, and we knew that. The response though that we've had from both readers and partners we're working with, and also people we've been speaking to at other publications, the constant refrain is, let me know when the book is out.
Yeah.
I really want to do something with the book. It's the book as an object, the book as a legitimate piece of reporting, as a legitimizing force is huge. That having been said, a lot of this is hunch based because we've only done
Which is
one.
fine. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do as an entrepreneur.
So it's kind of a
everything I'm doing is hunch based.
But what this isn't is it's not moving away from online subscriptions. It's what is the we've seen it with Amazon doing more looking at serialized fiction. It's like, what does a subscription-based... where does the world of books and subscriptions meet? And don't get me wrong, we're definitely going to continue doing daily dispatches, or at least frequent dispatches within a sort of week window, because...
So you might not even do one daily in the future?
Possibly not. One of the big discoveries, moving away from ebooks for a second, one of the massive discoveries we've had is, and conversations we've had internally is, the daily model is a weird one. Well, there is an assumption that because you can publish something every day and because we're topical, daily is the future. There's this whole thing, well, why would you do a weekly magazine? Why wait when you can get stuff out straight away? And actually the answer is anticipation, and this is something that books have been really books tie into as well. Anticipation is something that is massively missing from the web right now. The fact that you can go on to something like Pando and see a constant flow of stuff is really useful for a site like Pando, where it's a news site and where you need to be ahead of the news curve. Actually, for the type of stuff we do, which is Josh going to Juarez for a week and us spending a lot of resources.
But what
and his
about
time.
frequency? And what about people, you being top of mind and people coming to you?
No, frequency is very. No. Okay, you have to.
Okay.
So Patrick Sale, one of our writers.
Sorry.
Okay, so Patrick Sale, one of our writers, just called and ruined the entire flow I was in because we're filming this on my iPhone.
He's fired.
Because we're professionals. So we're certainly cost cutting now by removing one of our writers. So what was I saying? Yeah, no, frequency is very, very important. But honestly, with the kind of writing we're doing, we love to think that people come every day religiously and want to read another 5,000 word piece from the War Nerd but actually, looking at our traffic and looking at the feedback we've had from people come at least once or twice a week, but they don't necessarily come every day. But when they come, they spend fucking ages on the site. So one of the things we're looking at is, and we haven't got an answer to this yet, is what is the value of one daily dispatch versus the issue-based thing? And a lot of the assumption always was that now that we can publish every day, weekly was a throwback to the days when you had a print cycle and you had to mail stuff to people. Now you don't need to be weekly, you can be daily. But actually...
So you started out wanting to be weekly.
Correct.
You went to daily and now you're going back to weekly. You have pivoted this company more than any media company I can think of. Do you do this because you get bored and you want to shape things up, or do you do it based on results, or do you do it based on hunches?
The last two, not the first one. I mean, I get bored even when I'm changing things. So I'm on a swivel chair, for Christ's sake. I mean, I like that. No, I think... No, I mean, and the word pivot has meant even tweaking frequency now. I think we always set out that...
But you've changed this business a lot in a very short period of time.
We've kept very consistent about the product we offer. In terms of the core product, it's always been topical, frequent, well done.
No, it wasn't initially. Initially, it was supposed to be more jokey than it was, and initially it was less sheer political. Yeah. It's changed a lot. The design of the site has changed. Tablet versus web has changed. The newsstand. I mean, I can enumerate about 10 major changes.
Everything you've said is true. What I'm saying, the core though has always been topical journalism, and really well done topical journalism. People pay for that. It's not like we were selling dog food last week. It's not like we've pivoted like bourbon to Instagram.
Right.
What we've definitely done though is tweaked, and we've done it really quickly because frankly we have. We just raised another $300,000, but compared to how much the total we've raised is less than a third of what Pando raised. I mean, we don't have time to do.
And you've always been doing something more experimental than
right, and we're experimenting. And the whole point of the business is to experiment and to solve these problems. And frankly, we try something, and if it's working, and we always explain to subscribers what we're doing, and we haven't seen a subscriber revolt around.
Yeah. No, I guess my question is, how do you know in that period of time something's not working? Because I think media, it takes a while to know if something's working.
No, so I think I'm not saying we've done everything right, but I think actually we've done a two-track thing very well, which is if you look just on things like Twitter and on the sort of social public things, how people are talking about not safe for work. I think we've done very well at keeping a consistent thread of what Not Safe for Work is about, to the point where we have allowed the fan base to grow, and people are now very passionate about it. And you start to see stupid stuff like, which we appreciate, like people sticking the Not Safe for Work stickers on their laptops and getting very evangelical about Not Safe for Work. Which, if we'd have changed what the product was 50 times to the point where subscribers didn't know what it was, that wouldn't happen. I think we're starting to see. The overall traffic and awareness of Not Safe for Work is increasing, and the understanding of what Not Safe for Work stand for is increasing. I think we've operated on two tracks though. On the other track, we've changed a lot the tone of the thing, the frequency, the look of the site, as you say, the features. Some of the features we've moved in and moved out of, because I think all of our readers agree there is a need for funny, topical, well-done journalism, and they're happy to pay for it, and that's our audience. And with a certain sensibility about the world, which I think has stayed consistent, because it's me and it's our writers. Our writers really haven't changed that much at all. If anything, we've just doubled down on them. the stuff that's changed, I hope readers will think are positive changes.
Yeah.
And every time we do it, the readers say, it's even better now. Like, it's, as long as we're heading on that track.
But I guess my thing is, and I mean,
maybe this is
just difference in the types of companies we're building, or maybe it's a difference in us as entrepreneurs. Like, if I really believe something, like, and, you know, the readers aren't necessarily getting it, that doesn't convince me that it's wrong. Like, in some cases it is. Like, so for instance, like, you know, the Pando List, which I loved, you know, had literally declined in readership every week we did it. So, like, even though I loved it and I thought it was great, there's clearly something that was not working about the way we were doing it. And, you know, I think, you know, we could have retooled it and we could have done a bunch of stuff and tried other things. But, you know, Amanda wanted to move on, so sort of the decision got made for us prematurely. But we also profiled 100 people. I mean, we gave it a long time.
Yes,
and, you know, there were, you know, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of views of those. So it's not like it was a total failure, but like there was something about it that wasn't resonating. So I think that was an example of like, we're just not quite doing this right. On the other hand, well, and maybe there is the two are similar now that I think about it. The other example I was going to give was the Pando Ticker. Is like, of everything we set out to do, sort of day one with Pando Daily, it's shocking how much the reader survey we did literally was like, could have been written by me. I mean, our readers have completely gotten everything we were trying to do, with the exception of the Pando Ticker. Just the people who read it love it, but en masse, our readers have not understood the value of it. You know, which to my mind, it was like, okay, well, this is a product failure because I don't understand why anyone in the audience wouldn't want this. And so it's like, and there are people, even when we redesigned it, who, you know, like one or two, I'm talking one or two, not like 60, but like one or two was like, you should just kill the Pando Ticker and focus on long. And I was like, we never will. It's core to our strategy. You know, my core belief is you need to have breadth and depth. But that's not the core of like, you know, this is the type of journalism we do. It's a feature thing that hasn't taken off as quickly as, frankly, I thought it would. But, you know, I'm continuing to tweak it because, like, I think it's just core, and I think there are certain media things that are new and are changing behavior and are not necessarily intuitive. And, like, I will keep hammering away at it until we've tried every angle and every way to do it, you know?
I think the key is it's exactly what you just said. It's deciding what's core to your vision and what's not core. And core to my vision for Not Safe for Work is the type of journal. Look, if I was basing my core decisions on what's popular and what's not popular, I can tell you right now that at the very least, I'd be doing a Not Safe for Work live every day because everybody fucking loved that thing. But it's not core to us, and so we don't do it anymore. Even though everyone screams out, "Bring it back! It was so good." It's like it's not
everyone.
No, I mean those who comment, those who express a preference. But it's not core, and it was always
that's interesting.
So I mean, the one thing I keep hearing is bring it back. And if we wanted to get lazy popularity, the other thing is if I was chasing what was popular and what was going to work, there's a bunch of other type of content that we could be publishing that people would pay for right now that it just isn't core to Not Safe for Work. I know what Not Safe for Work is. I know the voice of Not Safe for Work. You look at Josh's ebook that came out today, and it's perfectly consistent with that. You look at the stuff Mark Ames is doing, and that all of our writers are doing. And every writer that we've hired and every writer that we've unhired demonstrates that commitment to the type of journalist.
So do you think you've nailed where it's going?
There are certain, absolutely. I know exactly where it's going. The point is, though, there's like a shell around it of features and individual segments and things like when it's published. It's like I've got to deliver this payload of amazing journalism that has a tone, is basically fearless, is the kind of stuff you would see in old issues of Ramparts and Rolling Stone back in the day, and all this, that kind of long form journalism that you've paid a reporter to go and spend some serious time reporting, but it's also got a voice, and it's funny, and it's definitely not for everyone. And we've got that sort of core that we have to deliver, and the payload that the shell that we put that in, I will keep iterating and changing until I figure the one that's most effective at delivering that payload.
So you don't know what that shell is?
I have 100 ideas for what that shell could be. And
Jesus, that's a lot of iterations.
But the point is, it's almost like 70 of them are already there, but some of them are just flying off, and the payload is still going. I'm very happy with us messing with things like, does this come out 5 times a week or once a week? Do we deliver it on a metal plate
Yeah.
or a wooden tablet or a fucking or online. I'm like, all of these questions I'm happy to mess around with to find the answer to, as long as the core of the type of journalism we do stays absolutely rock solid. If you see us doing cat videos, we're fucked.
So that's interesting because that's sort of similar to what we're doing with Pando Monthly.
Yeah.
I mean, which is weird because like Pando Monthly has sort of undisputedly been, the thing that we've done that sort of immediately caught on in a big way and people felt was like very different from other things.
Right.
There's zero sign that, something needs to change with Pando Monthly, but there's just things I think we could do better.
Yep.
And I think the reason that people love Pando Monthly is the guests and the content of that conversation is so good.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of ways we can make the experience of being there a lot better.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so like we're really looking at that, even though they still sell out every time.
Right.
I mean,
The guest and the
there's zero sign. I mean, we just opened up memberships today, and like they're selling pretty well.
Right.
It's like there's literally zero sign that anyone is unhappy, but sometimes I think. I don't know. I guess it is kind of a gut thing because I am not sure that data is telling me otherwise. But I know what people love about Pando Monthly is the content.
But I don't know
and
why.
We're not going to change the content.
I don't know why I've suddenly started talking in these weird military gun metaphors or ballistics metaphors. But it's that same thing of like just when a guy invented a bullet and a gun and he found it could kill people. He didn't go, okay, my work here is done, and then walk away. It was like, okay, how do I make it more effective? How do I make it better at doing this horrible, grisly job? And the same with like a nuclear bomb or whatever. It's about delivering the payload.
I feel like I do that less with the blog itself. I mean, we did obviously do a redesign, but like in terms of the blog itself, I think it's just been a work in progress.
But you've got to look at it right. But
writers,
look at the whole.
get the right editors. And
we
staff
haven't got rid of the.
And get sort of all of that like tweaked in the way that we want. I mean, oddly enough, like we've had more changes in staff than you.
Right.
But like the format has pretty much stayed the same.
Recent redesign notwithstanding, but there's the whole point is for both of us. I think it's we're
still publishing like 10, 15 posts a day.
Right.
We're still. I mean, there's nothing changed in like our.
But we're right, and we're still. I mean, and the fact is, we still have the same writers doing largely the same job as they were before, just different lengths and different frequencies and different everything else. I think the point is, for both of us, we have a very, very clear and fixed core idea of what the payload we're trying to deliver is. And Pando Monthly is a great example. You know that event is you talking to amazing guests and asking them questions in a particular way and imparting information to a particular audience. Mm-hmm. Now, and you've achieved a form of that, but there are, to my point earlier, 100 other tweaks you could make that would, and you decide sometimes, I know sometimes you want to do a free live stream of it. Other times you're kind of colder on that idea. Sometimes there's talk about like, can we do more networking around the event? Other times it's like the event is the thing. Like there's venues change. Like there's so many different tweaks you can do, and it's all in the service of how do we deliver this payload most effectively. And then that's like one aspect of Pando, and then there's the bigger thing, which is there's the overall Pando payload, which is how can we most effectively deliver our type of reporting and our worldview to this audience.
But I don't think we tweak that, is what I'm saying.
I think you tweak it more than you think you do. I think the key is it should be relatively, though, unnoticeable. I mean, the point is, you haven't changed what Pando is. You haven't changed who the target audience is. You haven't changed who the writers are. You haven't changed. Oh, I mean, you've added and changed, but you haven't changed the type of.
I don't think the mission is. I think we're different than we were 6 months ago.
But the point is, the mission is fixed, and the point with us is the mission is fixed. I know I want to get from point A to point B, and point B is having enough people paying to read our worldview, and that's what all journalism is of this type. Our worldview, so that we don't have to go to advertisers or any more investors to subsidize it, and we want to prove that that's a model that still exists. And
which is interesting because I just published something going off on paywalls.
Right,
which
but
actually I think, I didn't get into this in the piece, but I think that it is a big distinction that people don't make with paywalls is that like there's always been, niche, trade, specialized publications that are paid for. Where paywalls don't work, long term, I'm convinced, is in big general interest newspapers of record. But
because they have
I'm curious to see how it does work with you guys. Well,
they have to have a big paper of record like the Post or the Times have to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people to cover every possible thing, and it's just insane because not least because you realise suddenly that the gardening supplement is read by 8 people, and what's the point of having a team of 12 people working on it? It doesn't make any sense. For us, so to that point though, in terms of paywalls, the question of having a paywall or not having a paywall is even that for me is up for grabs. Which is that I'm not thinking about getting rid of it, but that for me is something that I think it's not binary. If we
Interesting. I would have assumed that was...
No, it's not. That's not core. There's a great book, which in fact I bought a new copy of because it's so great and I lost my original copy. I hate business books, but this book by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, who I'm assuming...
Hold it still, no one can see it.
Heath brothers.
Made to stick.
Made to stick. They also wrote a column in Wired. I don't know if they still do, because I don't read Wired anymore. But it's a book that's all about once you identify the core idea, then that's what's important. It's the core idea, and everything else fits around it. So if you're an airline like Southwest, your core might be being the number one low-cost way of traveling from A to B. And once you define that that's what you do, every other decision you can make any other decision you like as long as it feeds into that core. And one of the things with us, the core is high-quality journalism that, from our particular worldview, that is paid for by the readers. Now, once you identify that, it doesn't matter to me if we end up giving away the stuff that's on our site, if that then means people buy more ebooks. I don't care if we don't even have a website. I don't care if we print it on the back of placemats and put it and sell it to people on the street. I don't give a shit what the answer ends up being in terms of delivery or in terms of frequency. All I care about is that core idea, which is I want there to be a world in which people
that's a
will
bit
still
how
pay
our
for
ad
journalism.
revenues are. There's a lot of stuff we're going to try, but our main thing is we just don't want page view focused ads.
Yeah,
but like other than that, there's a million different ways to...
Right, and I think the key to being, I know nothing about being a good entrepreneur, but to my mind, the key to being an entrepreneur versus a huge company that can't make these kind of decisions is we can make these decisions.
Well, I mean, this is per the Washington Post thing I wrote earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, and not to get back into this, but it's like, the problem that this is what pissed me off about the Columbia Journalism Review article, is it sat back and said, every day they don't put up a paywall, they're losing money. And how are they going to support, this loss of $60 million? They should put up a paywall. No, they have half the readers of the New York Times, a totally different value proposition. And the New York Times has only brought in $100 million from the paywall.
Yeah.
So even by CJR's own math, that would not stem the losses. There clearly is a deeper problem has to be fixed. So, but what pisses me off
it's the HBO dumbasses thing of, they're leaving money on the table. Why don't they just charge $12 for Game of Thrones?
We're leaving money on the table. We've turned down so many ad network deals because it's not how you build a long-term business.
Every business is leaving money on the table. They could go into porn. They could sell chickens. People want to buy chickens. Why don't they sell chickens?
And I mean, Don Graham's one of the most forward-looking, tapped into Silicon Valley, understands where technology is going, possibly the only person in the old media world who's like that, and is aggressively looking for the answers. And to me, the idea that we should mock a company who's trapped in this sort of innovator's dilemma for actually, kind of burning the boat and being like, no, like we got to figure it out or we go out of business because the solution needs to be a long-term solution. Like, all we do is mock big companies for not doing that.
I'd say,
so, obviously it's easier for a small company to do, but I think it's impressive when a big company does it.
Yeah. No, I would add to that list people like Alan Rusbridger from The Guardian in the UK, who, again, have old media. I mean, The Guardian's been around since the 1800s, or maybe the 1920s. I should check that.
No one cares.
I should check that. Fact-checking. Anyway, but the point is, they've massively invested in the openness of The Guardian and opening up their data and all this other stuff, which is, and they're losing shit tons of money. And people keep saying, and they're going to have to shut down their print product. But again, they're just like,
do it,
right? And that's the point.
To me, that's not the core.
So this is my point, and this is my point, which is you decide what your core is. And there will be lots of people who said The Guardian's getting rid of its print. 10 years ago, the idea of The Guardian shutting down its print publication is like The Guardian shutting down. Now it just isn't. Now it just is. It's irrelevant. It's a shell that flies off. It doesn't matter. The core of The Guardian is still.
One of these two to to figure something dramatic out, because I do think that there are like these core values in old media, and frankly a lot of new media companies that are getting created are getting flipped. They're not being standalone companies. They're not built by families who have this great sense of mission of the public good. So I think there's a lot of value in old media being part of what survives. I think there's obviously a lot of value in new media shaking it up. But like, if every old media company embraces a paywall that does not pay their bills and doesn't alter their model or cost structure, long term, they will either go out of business or they will become small, tiny, shells of what they once were that are not read by the masses. And I don't think that's a good solution for journalism of the world.
Look, I think, again, it comes down to the idea of what is core, which is, I don't really care if they do a paywall, if they don't do a paywall. What I care, all they should be thinking is, what is our core mission?
Yeah.
What is the thing we're trying to deliver? And in the Washington Post case, they have to decide, are they a print publication or a publication that is read by people in Washington, D.C., in which case they can put up a paywall, they can shut it right down, they can essentially become Politico.
They can become a trade pub, essentially.
And they can become a trade pub. Or they can, and in which case they don't need a fucking gardening supplement or whatever the other bullshit they have.
They don't need 500 people in the newsroom.
They don't need 500 people, they need maybe 50. They need to be Politico, or maybe 100. Or they can continue to want to be a general national newspaper, potentially international newspaper, in which case a paywall is the worst possible thing they can do. They clearly want the latter. That's clearly why having a paywall isn't the right idea for them. I think the Journal's taken a different approach and decided we're quite happy to just be focusing on these. We don't need to be a general interest publication anymore. There are certain people who will always have to read the Journal, and we're quite happy with them.
Yeah, we're going to focus on them.
So, look, I think that's what all of this comes down to, is it's identifying, and that doesn't mean that's all you end up focusing. Like, that's your only mission. Like, one of my other missions is, and this is definitely the same with you, is remaining independent.
Right.
We will not sell. I want to be that dynasty. I love the idea, whether it's family driven or whatever else. I want to be that company, that sort of Condé Nast, that whatever that ends up acquiring others rather than being acquired. I have no interest in ever selling the company. But that to me is still part of the original core, which is doing journalism with our worldview. We saw what happened at our
it's being mission oriented,
or any other publication which gets sold is inherently the worldview is no longer your own. Even if you say, well, can you point to me what's changed? It's like, it's not your worldview anymore. It's the owner's worldview is not the worldview of the publication. There's a disconnect, and ultimately the owner is going to win, or they're going to sell. And with us, staying independent is part of that core mission. The stupid things like, one of the other things I want to do, well, as in things that don't matter to people outside the company, one of the other things I want to do is basically build Not Safe for Work as an environment where our writers, it's their home in the way that a lot of publications used to be, where we have, the reason why we're focusing a lot on ebooks is one of the big things our writers want to do is books. And it's such a natural extension that it's insane for me to commission someone like Josh to go and do this Juarez thing, and then have to go to HarperCollins and convince him to do the book. It's the book that they will do will end up being so massively different from it frustrates the writer. They may get a check in the short term, but it frustrates the writer. It pisses me off. It means our worldview is not reflected by that book, so we should be doing that. But it also means if one of our writers gets arrested or something, I want them to know that the publication has their back. And all of that, though, to me, feeds into that thing of, if we can make the writers feel that comfortable and that at home, they're going to do their best work, and it means that we get to do the journalism we want to do.
No, I think both of us share that culture of wanting to create this the same way a lot of Valley companies are engineer-centric, a very reporter-centric company. I mean, to the point where, Ani, who does almost everything that needs to be done at Pando, where it's if you could point to one person that could probably hobble the company if she left, it's Ani. But even she is always says she has reporter envy, because it's just clear that the reporters are the focus of this company and always will be. And it's sorry, it's run by a reporter.
And I think
there's so many little decisions we make that go into that.
But what's interesting is I think you and I both see it in the traditional sense, in the way that you read. I just finished reading the biography of, I have so much time to read, maybe I should work harder. I just finished reading the story of Marvel Comics, and how in the old days it was a dysfunctional.
Is that the one that just came out?
Yeah.
I was gonna get it for my brother for Christmas.
It's
What do
really,
you, is it
really
good?
good. Really
Yeah.
good. If I hadn't dropped my copy in the bath, I'd give you my copy for it. But, I mean, you can, but it's some of the pages are kind of torn. And
No, that I will. That would be a shitty Christmas gift.
yeah. The point being, even though it was a dysfunctional clusterfuck even early on, the sense of family, the sense of sort of togetherness that publications of old used to have, it's a very traditional thing, and I think that there are a lot of Silicon Valley companies who think that creating a family just means A, using the word family, B, meaning having these big all hands meetings in which you agree to everything that everybody asks for, and it's like, you know, we've talked about companies where you go there and it's like the CEO tries to be everybody's fucking best friend, and it's hideous. It's just, that's not what I'm
no one's
talking
friend.
about. No, but a family doesn't mean the dad in a traditional family and the mum in a traditional family are not best buddies with the kids.
They don't give the kids everything they want.
Right, because it doesn't work like that. But also, being a family and doing all that stuff doesn't just mean having fucking free granola in the kitchen and free jelly beans. Or even giving dry cleaning to your employees so that they won't go home. It means actually providing the environment in which you would want to work and the environment in which... The closest example I can think to is something like Google's 10% time or whatever it was, 20% time, whatever it was, where they want you to feel like you can spend time dicking around.
I mean, frankly, I think a lot of companies do that. I think, you know, I've written about this. One reason that Facebook has been so successful in acquiring companies over other companies is because they have this really, and they have the exact opposite view of number of developers to innovation than any other big tech company. So everyone else would go and trumpet the number of engineers they have and be like, see, we're so innovative, we so prize engineering. Facebook did the exact opposite, which was to go to people and say, we have, this is our ratio of engineers to people using the site. Your code touches these people. I mean, it's such an engineer-centric thing that other companies wouldn't have come up with.
James Kotecki said something which was really great a few months back when we did just after our writers' retreat, where he was talking, very militaristic today, I'm feeling. I don't know why, given, I'm scared of blood. But James Kotecki made a reference to the Marines, where he said the thing with, please, if you remember the Marines, feel free to contradict me and tell me this isn't true. I have no idea. But he was saying in the Marines, everybody is a rifleman, but then they all have specialties. But the point is, every single Marine is first and foremost a rifleman. And he said the thing he liked about Not Safe for Work was that everyone, Josh, who wrote the book about going to RS for his teeth, is our lead developer. He's not employed as a writer, but he is a writer. And every single person we've hired so far is, at their core, a writer. They then sometimes have other skills, and I think that's a really interesting. I think that's a really interesting way to build the kind of organisation I want to build. Is that everyone should come from a place where they fundamentally understand the tenets of being a writer or a journalist. I think for you...
Yeah, I totally disagree.
Well, I'm sure you do, but at the same time, everyone you
I want
hire,
people really good at what I hire them to do.
No, I'm not, but I think the Marines would argue that their specialists are pretty good at what they do. What I'm saying is, you have to come from a place where your basic training is understanding the fundamental... I'm not saying all of our people will be writers who just so happen to be quite good at doing coding.
Like right now we're hiring a salesperson. I could give a shit if that guy knows how to write a post.
You see, if I hired that salesperson though, I would know, but again, it's not because you'd want them to write the post, it's because, and look, the biggest disagreement that happens between and maybe this is why we don't have advertising, but one of the big problems between editorial and advertising is that disconnect.
No, I think there should be an appreciation of our mission. I think everyone shares that. I think Ani has that. She's not a writer for the site. I think Keelan has it. She's not a writer for the site.
You're adding
Hallie's not a writer for the site.
You're adding the words for the site to the end of it. That's not what I mean.
Oh, well, none of them are writers either.
No. But
you said writer first and foremost. None of them are writers.
I'm not saying, and I'm not suggesting that that's what you should do at your company. I'm saying for us, for me, the core is, and I think part of it though is all of our writers write about themselves first, and then, they write about whatever topic they're writing about through themselves. And I think because our publication, because our voice is so... Everybody is essentially a character in a big story for us. And I think having somebody there who has no understanding of that that idea of like being a character in a bigger narrative and putting yourself at the center of it is going to be really uncomfortable at Not Safe for Work because we have things
Why?
Because we have things like Death Notes.
Readers can appreciate it, and they're not writers. I mean, that's silly.
No,
That's like saying, oh, no, I'm not. I'm saying
the readers aren't in the room with us.
No, I'm saying that you're saying they'll be uncomfortable there. I don't think that's true. I think there's tons of people who appreciate content and appreciate a mission and know why they like a site. That doesn't mean that they're qualified to do it.
I'm not. So there are two different things there. I'm not suggesting the readers all should be writers. I don't give a fuck.
Obviously, but you're saying they would be uncomfortable there.
Remember we have things like Death Notes where every single piece of discussion, which is like you would have on Yammer, is public. So if you aren't somebody who feels comfortable communicating ideas that are going to be read in a way that are going to be read by a big audience of readers, you're probably not going to be comfortable. I'm not saying it's the only way to start a business. I'm saying for us, the key is that everybody has to have an appreciation and probably some experience at communicating ideas, not just for the person they're directly talking to, but to a wider audience.
I think as you scale, that would be a mistake to hold to.
But there are plenty of people. So a good example is somebody like James Aylett. Now, James Aylett is a CTO who was on the founding team of Tango Zebra that sold to advertising.com, an amazing technology company, pure technology company that had nothing to do with writing. He was then on the CTO at Artfinder, which was another company that there's a huge amount of technology. Reid Hoffman was an investor. But he is at his core a writer. And in fact, I met him when he was acting on stage, doing something that he himself produced. Just because somebody is capable of understanding a writer and has the soul of a writer doesn't mean they're not good at something else. I'm not saying
I'm not saying that's not the case at all. I'm just saying I realize that. I think though to say everyone at our company should be this first and foremost cuts you off from incredibly talented people who would grow other parts of the organization. I think it's an interesting coincidence. I think it's a bad guiding light for building a company, particularly as it scales.
I'm perfectly happy for this to be a big difference in our company.
Like Sheryl Sandberg does not understand coding, which is very much the core of Facebook.
But Marissa Mayer does, and
how's Yahoo doing?
Well,
Heather didn't understand editorial at TechCrunch. She wasn't a writer.
There is an argument to be made that some of the tensions in companies where I do agree that there is always going to be you shouldn't have a publisher if you have a publisher who cares more about the editorial than the commercial, you're going to have a problem.
To me it's
I'm not disagreeing with that. But that doesn't mean that your publisher cannot have come from that background. It doesn't mean, and for us...
But it doesn't mean they need to either. I just think it's a silly construct. I think that, Keelan, who's sort of that business role for us, isn't a writer and, but has worked in media a long time and, really loves working in publishing and loves everything about working at a place with a strong editorial mission and gets our mission and all that, great stuff. The same way Heather did with TechCrunch. Keelan's been so unbelievably phenomenal at this job because she fundamentally looks at a news organization from the other side of the table. And she and I disagree and we hash through stuff, but that is, maybe I'm just incredibly old school, but to me that is the nature of a news organization. You have the editorial lead and you have the business lead, and they, frankly, if you're a good business and you're a good editorial organization, they shouldn't be in sync.
No, look, and again, let's not conflate having experience as a writer and an understanding of that with making that first and foremost that mean make it bad at your job. I'm not suggesting, for example, when you look at when James Aylett builds something like Tango Zebra, he didn't write his code in rhyme. It's not like he puts the writing first. What I'm saying is, I do want, especially when the company is the size it is, I do want people who fundamentally are comfortable with the fact that every role at Not Safe for Work is a public one. There is no such thing. There is, and yes, I actually would rather somebody who is 99% the best person at their job, but who is comfortable existing in the slightly weird public craziness that is what we have planned for Not Safe for Work, versus being 100% and being basically...
and my point is, I don't think you have to decide. I think if that's your philosophy as you scale, you're not picking between 99% and 100%.
Okay, 50%, and look, if there's somebody on our team who has no interest in reading or writing.
That's not what we're saying.
No, but well, that's 50%.
That's not what we're saying at all.
Look, ask me again in 2 years' time when we've had to hire a company doctor, I care if they write well. But right now, when everything we're building, product, commercial, everything is based around editorial at the heart of it. We're not selling advertising. We're not doing anything other than trying to produce the best editorial product and sell it. Right now, for me, and the fact that a lot of what we're doing with things like Death Notes and just generally the way that the stories of all the different people, it's a series of characters interconnecting. Yeah. Right now, any more than I would cast a TV show and hire actors whose job it was to not be on stage or who suffered from terrible stage fright. Right now, I'm not interested in having any actors in our show that don't want to be on stage.
There's people who produce the show, that make the show happen, who are not on stage. That's my point. And I think that when everyone is too much on the same page, it leads to a lot of things being myopic. There were a lot of big mistakes we almost made with our redesign that people who weren't totally in the editorial point of view actually pointed out, and had I not listened to them, we would have made massive mistakes that would have alienated readers. I mean, one thing that I think makes our reporting really strong is that, Nathan, our managing editor, is not a major tech insider. And so he, reads things and has sort of a more generalist view on it and a more generalist second set of eyes. I think when you're too inside and everyone's doing the same thing and everyone's breathing the same fumes and everyone has the same worldview, it's really dangerous for building a company.
I'm not going to, look, again, neither of us at this point have the definitive right or wrong answer, and I think it's good and probably interesting for the three viewers of the show if we have different approaches to things and we see which one works. I will say this, you and I are similar in one way, which is that the fact
we're both starving.
We're both starving. The fact is we both, the editorial and journalistic credibility of the thing is the most important, and no commercial decision will ever override that. Now, your approach is to hire people who will push back the other way on some of that stuff and to say...
My approach is hiring the best person for their primary job, simply.
Right, who inherently... Well, and as will I. But... I mean, I'm not going to hire someone who was crap at their job. It may just be a much harder find for me to find.
But it's like, that's like me saying, like, I need people who work at Pando to all play a musical instrument. That's not your job, but I just need you to all play a musical instrument.
No, it isn't like that at all, because Pando isn't a music company. But it is perfectly valid if you were hiring people to run your music
well, then
business.
It's like saying you all need to have coded or you all needed to have started a company, because that's what we write about.
Yeah, I think... That
would be a horrible thing. I want to find people who are great reporters and writers.
No, I cannot.
If their job is to be a reporter or writer. If their job is to sell, I want them to be great at that.
No, Pando isn't a company that's about... Pando, as its company, doesn't build companies or start companies or code. Pando is a journalistic organization, so it isn't not legitimate for you to say, I want everyone to have experience and understanding of what that means.
I don't know. Experience and understanding is a different thing. Keelan has an understanding of how media works. She sees it from a business point of view.
We're just very different. In the same way as Disney insists that everybody who works at its parks are comfortable being on stage, from the street sweepers to the everyone. That's how I feel about our publication is that
I think if you're going to put a play on, you need someone to design the sets, you need someone to sell the tickets, and you need someone to put the props out, and you need someone to direct it.
And look,
I've never been to a play where every single person involved in that production was on the stage. It was your metaphor.
I'm not going to... I mean... There are plenty of plays like that. There is a danger of over-examining
the producer or the director, every single person. There's not.
There is a danger of over-examining the metaphor and losing sight of the original point, which is that metaphors don't always stand up to scrutiny. The point does, which is for us, for our publication, for our company, I want every single person involved, especially at this early stage. Ask me when we're 10,000 people if everybody is still a writer. But for me, the fundamental is, in the same way as, if I ran a music store, my first hires, even the person who does the bookkeeping, I would like that person to be able to read music, so that...
Oh my God, that's ridiculous.
So I don't run a music store, let's again not
exactly good, because you'd have a bookkeeper who couldn't do the books, but could read Beethoven.
If you're telling me that these are mutually exclusive...
I think you see a world of finite talent in all things. I don't think it exists. Talk to any entrepreneur. Single biggest fucking problem, hiring people.
Fine.
Hiring good people at a job. If I find someone who's good at the job that I want, and like they're fit with our organization, they get our culture, and they want to work for what we're paying, I don't give a fuck what their hobbies are.
That's fine. For the kind of publication we are, again, where our writers are the characters in a production, and
the writers, yes.
And the rest of the team, but somebody like Josh, someone like James Aylett, the team is inherently visible. I'm perfectly comfortable right now in demanding that all of those be people who have at their soul, or whatever it is, whatever the word is, an understanding and an appreciation and experience in what it means to be a writer. Because that's the core to our business. I'm not saying it's right for every company, but there are plenty of companies, though, by the way, that will demand that all of their team work. Virgin is one of them, where they will. Virgin Atlantic.
I'm shaking the camera because you can't see me shaking my head.
Virgin Atlantic, they will insist that every one of their people, from the person who does the accounts to everybody, to the guy who makes the coffee, goes and works in all the various different departments. It's actually quite a common thing to force all of your people to go and work in other departments during your training.
That's incredibly different than requiring you hire someone who has experience as a writer. Zappos doesn't hire, when Zappos hires a CTO, doesn't hire as a CTO someone who's worked in customer service. They do make that person work for customer service for 2 weeks to have an understanding of it. Dramatically different things.
Zappos is a bad example for this, because Zappos does hire people who have worn shoes. And my point is, you have to, for me, it is fundamental that...
That's such a flawed analogy.
And again, now, the reverse is, that's your analogy. My
analogy was what you just said. No, Paul. If you're going to say this, don't fucking twist my words. What my analogy was you were saying companies who make people work in every department.
Yep.
Zappos is one of the most famous ones for doing that, because they make everyone work in customer service.
Yep.
What I said is there's a distinction between making someone rotate through a department that is at the core of that job and saying, we will have to hire people who have this background. It's just not the same thing.
I'm not saying this right for every company.
But you said it was.
I'm not saying it's... No, I didn't say it's right for every company.
Let's review... No, that's not what I said. You said there are plenty of companies who do this and gave Virgin as an example. I'm saying that is not the same thing. They did not hire people as someone who's a flight attendant to be the CEO of the company.
No, but they do. My point is, they want people, and I'm acknowledging that for us it's a more extremist position, but they do appreciate the fundamental value in making sure that somebody, no matter what their job is, has experience of some kind in the other department, so that they can have an appreciation of what the company does and why decisions are made the way they're made. My point is, I take a much more extremist view on it, which is that I want people who... Because even the example you pointed to, somebody like Heather at TechCrunch, how many times were there these ridiculous, fierce fights where, because...
Again, I think that makes a healthy news organization.
No, I'm sure it does, but all that would happen is Mike would end up steamrolling over and just being like, well, we're just not having that company sponsoring Disrupt. We're not doing that.
And maybe that was the core of what made TechCrunch work.
Maybe my point is, I'm just too much of an extremist that I'm not going to get into a fight with somebody. Writing is one of those things where, I think
this has to do with you and I and our difference with confrontation.
No, my approach is one of, maybe it is because, or maybe it's a patience thing, because I'm not going to sit and explain to somebody who doesn't understand the fundamentals of. I'm not in the same way as arguing with people with business. Let me finish. Arguing with people with business inside is fundamentally frustrating because they do not understand why it is a problem publishing total horseshit, because it gets page views, they say. People like it, they say. And I say, but do you not, where is your fucking soul? Don't you understand?
Well, but obviously, I would never hire a business person who thought, I mean, you're conflating things that are not in the same category.
What I'm certainly not doing is saying that Pando is anything like Business Insider.
But you're saying a business person we would hire would have just because they weren't a writer, would have no understanding of the value of editorial.
No, basically my approach is, I want to have people where I never have to have a discussion with them about, and maybe this is a conflict thing, although I do, when the moment is right, I enjoy conflict in the right situations. I don't have any interest in having conflict with people who work for me.
And I think that's surrounding yourself with yes men.
People
with the same worldview, which is really dangerous.
If you think that the writers that I have are yes men,
If you pick people who won't challenge you, which is exactly what you just said, I think that's dangerous for an organization.
Look at the writers we have. Look at the roll call of writers we have. These are people.
Yeah, they challenge the Koch brothers, not you.
Right. These are people who.
I think when you have people all your same worldview, it's a problem as a company. This is just a different opinion we have.
Look, I agree with you, and one of the reasons why this is interesting is because we have a difference of opinion. I like to surround myself with people whose opinions are different. What I'm saying
just
is,
not your company.
No, what I'm saying
like
is
your friends.
No, I'm saying I'm not going to hire somebody who I will ever have to have a conversation about why it is worth me sending somebody to somewhere for 6 months to produce no copy, but that one day might become an amazing book. I'm not having a conversation with a commercial person about that. I'm just fucking doing it.
Oh, Jesus. You need a board so badly. You need someone to challenge things. Every good, important decision I've made as a CEO has been someone challenging me in something because it makes you defend it. It makes you have conviction. It makes you believe in it.
If you have
no one in your I'm not in your company. If you have no one in your company
I've got you once a fucking week to yell at me in my own fucking living room.
If you have no one in your company to challenge while you're doing things, you're fucked as a CEO. You're moving too fast to always do it for yourself.
If you think that your board gives you more shit than you give me on this fucking show, then you're out of your mind. And you know the great thing? I haven't had to give you any fucking equity.
Yeah, you do have to give me Thai food. We've got to go.
Let's go eat some food.
This is like an hour and I'm starving.
Yeah, and Jeff is calling. Angrily clutching Thai food, probably. This has been a fun one. I'm sure
God, surprisingly contentious. I'm getting this call. Bye.
I'm sure the viewer will like it. I'm just keeping filming.
I know, we're coming right now. Bye.
Join us next week.
On a far less contentious Why Is This News.
Fuck you.